It's 10 a.m. on the East Coast and 5 p.m. in Israel, where we're following the latest developments between Israeli forces and Hamas militants from Gaza, who breached the border and launched a deadly attack Saturday. Over 1,000 people on both sides have been killed since the initial assault. The U.S. National Security Council has confirmed that at least 9 American citizens are among the dead. CBS News foreign correspondent Hayley Ott is following the latest for us from Tel Aviv. Hayley, good to see you. What is the situation right now in Israel this morning, in the afternoon for you? What have you been seeing on the ground?
Good morning. Well, we're here in Tel Aviv, which obviously is a bit of a distance away from Gaza and the areas surrounding Gaza where those militant attacks primarily took place. But even so, today we've been hearing booms overhead, what we assume is rocket fire being intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. And out on the streets, people here in Tel Aviv are staying home pretty much. There were not very many cars. There are not many people out and about. They are staying at home, checking in on their loved ones, and really coming to terms with the fact that their country is at war.
Hayley, you mentioned when we spoke earlier this morning, the line of cars of volunteers, Israeli volunteers joining the forces. Can you talk a little bit more about what that says about the ethos of this thing and the conversations you've had on the ground?
Yes, so obviously there are an estimated 100 people who have been taken hostage in these attacks, and that's incredibly scary for the families of those hostages. But also there are social media videos that are being widely circulated showing these hostages. They're very graphic, in some instances too graphic for us to show on television, but they are being shared on social media, and many people here are seeing them. So collectively, everybody is very aware of what's happening and feeling it very directly. And what that has done is spurred people to try to help in whatever way they can. The Army has called up around 100,000 reservists. Those people are reporting for duty, but also volunteers are organizing. They are gathering water, food, any other things that they can gather to be helpful. And they're going to military bases. They're going to centers that have been set up for families of the missing who are searching for their missing loved ones or those who have been taken hostage. So the feeling here is really everybody is trying to figure out what they can do to help.
And Hayley, what is the mood as we look to see the response from the Israeli military? We've seen statements from Prime Minister Netanyahu, from the defense minister, the Prime Minister essentially saying that Israel is now on the offensive. And so I'd like to understand how people feel about the next steps that the Israeli military is going to take. There will be some collateral damage, and yet Israel does have a right to defend itself and to get back those hostages that are being held.
Yeah, that's being widely discussed here. Israel's defense minister just a little while ago announced a full blockade of Gaza. That means that power, fuel, and food will be cut off. We've been hearing reports that that includes water. So obviously Gaza is a very small space, but has over 2 million people living there. That will affect civilians as well. There's concern for the well-being of those civilians. There's also concern on this side from people who I've been speaking to, families of the hostages, for the well-being of those hostages, depending on whatever comes next in terms of a potential ground invasion or any other retaliation that Israel may take. Obviously, that's being discussed on the highest levels, but it's unclear really what the situation is going to be in the coming days and even hours.
Hayley Ott live for us in Tel Aviv, Israel. Hayley, thanks so much. Please stay safe out there. And President Biden has condemned this weekend's attack on Israel, and Weijia Jiang joins us with more from the White House response now. President Biden spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu over the weekend. What can you tell us about that conversation?
Yeah, they spoke twice by phone, and President Biden reiterated that the U.S. support of Israel is rock solid and unwavering, and said that he would vow to continue sending aid to Israel in the coming days. But the problem here, guys, is that it's not just up to President Biden, because, of course, this first Pentagon aid package did not have to be approved by Congress. But as we have been covering on this program, there is disarray on Capitol Hill. And right now, there is no Speaker of the House of Representatives. So what does that mean? It means Congress has to approve any aid, any additional funding for Israel. And both chambers have to agree, and so, or come to a majority vote. And right now, because there is no Speaker, they are not able to introduce any pieces of legislation, not just with regard to Israel, but anything, onto the House floor. So those members cannot vote until there is a Speaker. And that's why this timing is so terrible for the U.S.'s commitment to Israel. And so we can report that the Pentagon, in a show of force, has decided to move the USS Gerald Ford. That is the newest and most advanced aircraft carrier system there, along with 5,000 sailors and warships. They will also be providing fighter jets to the region and warships, along with munitions to Israel. So every time we have heard from a senior administration official on this, including President Biden himself, they continue to reiterate their commitment and support for Israel. It's just a matter of when, those dollars will actually be able to pour out of America, because, as I mentioned, things are in a chaotic state on Capitol Hill.
Weijia, as you know, there's a spotlight now on that recent deal between the Biden administration and the United States, essentially, and Iran, a prisoner swap deal, and the transfer of $6 billion in Iranian funds that have been frozen in the United States. There are some Republicans now that are blaming that deal that the United States made with Iran for this attack. There's no proof of that. In many instances, it does seem as if it's political sniping as opposed to anything based in fact or reality. But how's the White House responding to those accusations?
I'm so glad that you made that distinction, Vlad, because right now there's absolutely no proof at all. And in fact, the White House has been extremely fiery in pushing back against this claim, because in order for that to be true, two things have to be verified first. Number one, that Iran was tied to Hamas in this attack. Number two, that money in the fund that you're talking about, $6 billion, was spent. Not only was it spent, but it was spent to help aid Hamas. And so those things are not true. They have not been confirmed. And that's exactly why officials here have said that those Republicans, especially presidential candidates who are all very quick to start churning this narrative, are just spreading misinformation. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, went as far as to say that not a single cent of that $6 billion has been spent. And these are the candidates. They've all been outspoken about the $6 billion that were unfreezed. The former President Trump went as far as to say that American taxpayers were involved in this Hamas attack. And just to be clear, that $6 billion, they are Iranian assets. It was never American taxpayer money. It was frozen as part of the deal to bring 6 Americans who were imprisoned back home. It was unfrozen, and that money is specifically designated for humanitarian aid. Of course, Republicans are quick to say, you can say it's for humanitarian aid, but of course, Iran's going to use it however they want, and it's because they had this money that they were now funding Hamas. Again, it's a very wide leap to make, and as you rightfully pointed out, Vlad, it is a lot of political posturing at this point without any evidence.
Weijia Jiang providing much needed clarity and facts on the situation for us as always. Weijia, we thank you.
Sure.